Happy Friday. We close up shop in the month of January, the final January show today, January 30th, 2026. I'm your host, Jake Brown. Hit that thumbs up on the video, hit that subscribe button, keep commenting, and go follow me right now and subscribe to my YouTube at Jake Brown Live. Hit the Kwan. Hit the Kwan. Steven Kwan was a name mentioned in a very great piece by Will Salmon, who we are trying to get on. I am talking with Will. His schedule gets very busy, so we're working on getting Will Salmon on the program. So stay tuned for that. Again, Hank Azaria, we're working to secure too. So, I think now that a lot of the moves have passed, we're going to get more and more guests on. So stay tuned for that. But, a name he mentioned in his latest story for The Athletic was a guy that I've mentioned before that I think a lot of Met fans have mentioned. We're just not sure if there's interest on Cleveland's front, and that's Steven Kwan. The thought is this. You got Luis Robert. You're done adding. You're done making trades in the outfield. But what about this? Luis Robert's a one-year, experiment. If it fails, you buy him out. If it doesn't fail, he's here for another year. I don't think Luis Robert, as of now, is your center fielder for the next 6 years. Now, he could be great this year, great next year, and then you have no choice and say, we got to give Luis Robert a long-term deal. But that's not the case at the moment. So, to me, financially, Steven Kwan is almost free. I mean, we're talking about just under $8 million. He'll make $7.7 million this year, and he'll have his final year of arbitration before he's a free agent next year. So probably 10 or under next year. So you get 2 full years of Steven Kwan to play left field for you. Steven Kwan has pretty much only played left field, 542 games in left, 8 in center, 20 in right. So he would be your left fielder if you got him. If Cleveland has interest in moving him, I don't see why the Mets still can't go after him. You start to salivate when you think of an outfield. That's Kwan, Robert, and Soto. Kwan has won a Gold Glove all 4 years in the big leagues. He's been in the big leagues 4 years. He's won the Gold Glove every year. That is unheard of. That is Nolan Arenado's status of winning the Gold Glove every year. And yes, he's not a incredible on-base guy. He had 272, 330 on-base last year. 2024, 292, 368, 298, 373 his rookie year. The guy is a 281, 351 on-base guy. If I'm the New York Mets, I'm thinking to myself, we put Steven Kwan leadoff. He, averages 20 stolen bases a year. He had 21 stolen bases last year. We move Lindor down a spot to 2. We have Juan Soto in 3, creating more RBI opportunities for him. And then we have ultimate RBI opportunities for RBI and run and scoring position machine in Bo Bichette. Steven Kwan instantly, in my opinion, puts the Mets right towards the top of the National League behind the Dodgers. I don't think any move you make is having the Mets trump the Dodgers. Zip's projections have the Mets 3rd in the National League right now. That changes to right there behind the Dodgers if you go get Steven Kwan. When you talk run prevention, this is a guy who has won a Gold Glove every year. You would have a Gold Glover in left, a Gold Glover in second, a Gold Glover in short, a Gold Glover at second, that it eases your concerns a bit with what's happening at third with potentially Bichette and what's happening at first with Polanco or Beatty. Then you don't have to worry about throwing Beatty in left. Kwan for the next 2 years will be your everyday left fielder. Luis Robert will be your everyday center fielder. If someone like a Robert does fail, you have Carson Bench. I don't see the issue in waiting on Bench. Steven Kwan is not costing you much money. It's $8 million. If you said to me, Carson Bench will not touch the field in 2026 because the Mets got Steven Kwan, I would say, so be it. I think we're trying to force, I'm not saying Carson Bench isn't going to be great, but why with, under a month of AAA experience are we're beating down the Carson Bench drum if you can go out and get a Kwan and make your team light years better? So I don't know if Cleveland wants to trade him. He is an option the Mets explored according to Will Salmon, which means they probably called about him. Maybe they got shut down. So this could all just be talk. And again, this is what the show is. We're doing rumors. We're talking about what's going on, what the Mets can do to get better. So if you're a Met fan, and I'm sure everyone in the comments is going to agree, you would love to get Steven Kwan. Now, what would it cost? You just gave up Sproat. You just gave up Jet Williams. You don't want to trade Jonah Tong, who said he's not going to pitch for Team Canada, by the way, in the WBC. What would it cost? Is it a Watson? Everyone shut down the Severino trade thing. I said I 100% agree on that. Steven Kwan's going to cost you something. He's cheap. He's a Gold Glover 4 times in 4 years. He's a good hitter. He's a good player. He's a good clubhouse presence. Could it be, Beatty that you move? Because Beatty, I think, is probably asked by more teams than Vientos. Could it be Beatty, Wenninger, Reimer? Is that too much? You're going to have to give to get. Steven Kwan's a great player. What would it take? Let me know in the comments your thoughts. But if I'm the Mets, I'm calling Cleveland back and saying, hey, we got Robert, but we're not done. We got Robert for Acuna and a bag of balls. We didn't give up a lot for Robert. Go get Steven Kwan, and let's hit the Kwan in Queens. Not as exciting of a move. The Mets signed Austin Barnes to a minor league deal. He will be the third-string catcher. I actually really like this move by the Mets, and I know Austin Barnes' numbers in his career are not great as a hitter. But Austin Barnes has won 2 World Series. He was on the World Series champion Dodgers last year, only played 13 games. But he is an upgrade from Hayden Sanger, and I get it. He's not a great career hitter. He does have an on-base for his career, almost 100 points higher than his average. 223 average, 322 OBP in his career, 11 seasons, all with the Dodgers as a part-time catcher. But what I love is he's worked with a lot of different pitchers. He's worked with guys like Clayton Kershaw. He's won championships with the Dodgers. He's been part of winning teams every year in LA. He's been part of that culture. And why not get a piece of the puzzle, of what's going on in LA? Teams do that. You know how the Braves take guys from the Mets, or the Patriots take players from the Jets. Why not? Now, that doesn't matter because the Jets suck, but why not get a piece of the puzzle from the almighty Dodgers and bring Barnes in here? Maybe it could give you some insight on that pitching staff. I see it as kind of like a mini cheat code of adding Austin Barnes. And listen, Hayden Sanger was a very cool story, not taking anything away from him. Hayden Sanger was a Whole Foods employee in the office, and I think it was a remarkable story. He's not a major league catcher, and I thought he did a fairly decent job for what he is, but in terms of a third-string catcher, Austin Barnes is the kind of player you want. If Alvarez gets hurt, which, by the way, he has had a career of injuries so far, so Alvarez could very much get hurt. If Torrens gets hurt and you need a new backup, Austin Barnes is now your guy. Because you were talking about Sanger and then Kevin Parada, who was not doing well in the minor leagues, who you're was the next man in line. So I think what you always need as a team is that third guy who is pitched, who is caught in the big leagues for a while, that could work well with any pitcher, that has worked with all kinds of pitchers. And I think Austin Barnes is that guy. So love the Austin Barnes signing as a third-string catcher. We talked about Will Salmon, did a really good piece about the Mets' plans. The Mets went to Bichette reportedly early on in November before they got Marcus Semien about playing second base. So they had Bichette in their plans early on. Then they got Semien. And then once Bichette was still available in January, the thought was, wait a second, what about, let's just put him at third base? Because he only played 5 games at second base. So people will talk about, oh, he can't play third. Well, listen, he played second base at the highest level in the World Series, on one bum knee. So I think Bichette has some flexibility. The Mets like what he can do at third. It was also reported they never got close on Cody Bellinger or a trade for Ketel Marte or Wilson Contreras, 2 names that they were going after, which was interesting. But, that was their plan. And on the Alonso front, he was viewed as a one-market team. The Orioles were the only team willing to go anywhere close. The Mets were interested in making him a DH 5 out of 7 days a week, but on a short-term deal. Once he got that deal from the Orioles, it was pretty much over. Mets' other thoughts, if it wasn't going to be Semien, is they were going to put Luis Angel Acuna every day at second base. They also had thoughts about IKF, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. We got a comment about him a couple of days ago. I think the Mets ended up better here. And I know Simeon's older. I know he's getting paid a lot of money. But Marcus Semien, the leader and the Gold Glover at second base, I still think he's going to be fine at the plate. Think about it. Marcus Semien is likely your 6 or 7 hitter. I think he's perfectly fine in his 6 or 7 spot. And I think he'll be rejuvenated playing around this Mets team with, a bunch of really good players and a team that's going to be in the race. The Rangers were not. He won with the Rangers one year, but they were not in the race in 2025. So that was the Mets' plan that came to fruition, and, it came out a different way than they may have expected. The Mets also were checking in, as I said, on Kwan, Lars Nootbaar, a name we heard, Brendan Donovan, who still hasn't been traded, who's had interest around the league, Harrison Bader, who ended up signing with the Giants. We didn't talk about that, but he went to the Giants on a 2-year, $20 million deal. Likelihood of acquiring any of those guys varied. Again, I would still check in on Kwan again before this spring training starts in a few weeks. And Ramon Laureano, a name I want to talk about next week. Ramon Laureano and Adrian Morejon, 2 names. We'll dive more into that next week. But a potential trade with the Padres, could that be? We mentioned Mason Miller. We had mentioned those guys, and then those talks kind of died off. But when you think about one final piece to the bullpen and maybe a bat, could you get both of those in a trade where you're not giving up a lot? Both those guys are rentals. They're expiring one more year. So could Laureano and Morejon be for the taking for the Mets in a deal? Maybe it's Vientos and a prospect that gets it done. But that's something I'm curious about that we'll talk about next week. All right, let's wrap up the show with your comments from Thursday's show. Robert Daniels says, thank you. Canning was great. Yeah, I don't see why not. Same. Ricky also says Griffin Canning is great. I think he was a good dude, too. I think he was liked in that clubhouse. I think Canning makes sense. Kevin Fox, Canning was pitching very well for us before he was injured. To me, this would be a no-brainer depth signing. I agree. And listen, Griffin Canning may get a better opportunity where he has an actual chance to start elsewhere. For the Mets, he's their 7th or 8th guy. So they might bring him in here and he doesn't pitch an inning. Like, there is a chance that happens if all goes well with the Mets rotation. I don't see why it hurts to add as an insurance option. They essentially brought him in last year as kind of an insurance option, and he won a starting job in spring training. His ERA got inflated because those last couple starts he got rocked, but the first 2 months of the season, Griffin Canning was sensational. We were talking about Griffin Canning in the Cy Young conversation, and then he kind of imploded, and then he got hurt. Jose says Severino and Rooker would be a great addition to the Mets. Listen, the Mets aren't getting Brent Rooker. I think that is a pipe dream. Who wouldn't want Brent Rooker on their team? The A's are not getting rid of Brent Rooker. All right, last comment of the day. Al Boria says he agrees on Canning as well. Felix says Watson should not be touched. He has nasty stuff. And then Kevin Fox says, why is everyone rush to trade Senga? Yeah, I mean, listen, again, Kodai Senga, what it's about is shedding that money. If the Mets can get rid of the $30 million remaining owed to him for the next 2 years, and they don't have to cater the rotation every 6 days, like, I don't think the Mets would have a problem going with a normal 5-man and not catering to the 6-man, and then maybe having potential spot start guys, and then having the other guys go to the bullpen. So it's been about catering to Senga, and has he lost his confidence? Does he need to change his scenery elsewhere? You know, I still think Kodai Senga, when he's on, he is incredible to watch. But he's got a lot of work to do this offseason. Right now, he's a New York Met. But I have a feeling the Mets right now are not thinking the highest of Kodai Senga and have certainly been listening. Like, if you can tell me that you can trade Kodai Senga and Mark Vientos for Steven Kwan, and I'm not saying that's a proposal on any table, but if that was the proposal, I think the Mets do that in a heartbeat. They walk them to the airport. I just think maybe it makes more sense to keep Senga around, and if you got to trade him at the deadline when he looks good and you might not need him, then you do it. But it never hurts to have a lot of starting pitching. And I always say this, Kodai Senga costs you $15 million a year. You're paying Frankie Montas $17 million to not pitch at all this season. So in terms of value, Kodai Senga is not crushing your payroll. When he's on, that value is sensational. So maybe you give Kodai Senga a few months here to get it right. But I think the leash is shorter and shorter here on Senga. Like, if he doesn't look good in spring and look comfortable and the ghost fork isn't looking good, the Mets are going to have some decisions to make on what they do with him. Do they turn him into a reliever, or do they try and trade him? Is he a spot starter? Is he a long man? What is he if he does not look right in spring? Because at the end of the season, he was at rock bottom. They sent him to AAA. They said his stuff in Florida working out did not look good. They were thinking about the final week bringing him back, but they said he did not look sharp in the slightest. So it's been a long off season. Hopefully he turns it around. And we will turn it around on Monday and be back. On my birthday week, I'll be back in New York on Sunday through Wednesday. So I'll be recording if you see my backdrop from hotels. So make sure you subscribe, smash that thumbs up, keep on commenting, and follow your boy at Jake Brown Live. Have a great and a safe weekend, everybody. If you get hit by the blizzard, please be safe. Charge your phones, get your groceries, and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching Mets Daily.